In a lively little village nestled in the heart of a valley surrounded by rolling green hills and whispering winds, there once lived an old farmer named Wei. His home was simple, just a small wooden hut beside a field of golden crops, but his heart held the peace of 1,000 sunsets. Despite having little in terms of material wealth, Wei was admired throughout the village for his unshakable optimism and the calm, almost meditative aura that always surrounded him. Every morning, as the sun began to stretch its rays over the hilltops, Wei would be found tending to his fields, watering plants, turning the soil, whispering softly to his crops as if they were old friends. Life for him was a rhythm, a dance between effort and acceptance, between sowing and surrender. One scorching afternoon, as Wei was bent over a row of sprouting vegetables, sweat dripping from his brow, a neighbor came hurrying up the path. His face was drawn with concern, his eyes wide with the kind of worry that doesn't hide easily. "Wei!" the neighbor cried out, nearly breathless. "A terrible thing has happened. Your only horse, it's run off. It broke free and disappeared into the hills. How will you plow your land now? How will you haul your crops? This is a grave misfortune." Wei paused, straightened his back slowly, and wiped his forehead with the corner of his sleeve. Then, with a serene smile and eyes that held the depth of still water, he simply said, "This too shall pass." The neighbor blinked, confused. He had expected panic, or at least frustration, but Wei's calm acceptance unsettled him more than the loss itself. Days turned into weeks, the sun and moon danced in their eternal cycle, and the villagers returned to their routines. Then one crisp morning, as dew still clung to the grass and the mist lazily rolled off the hills, a remarkable thing happened. Wei's runaway horse came trotting back down the village path, but it was not alone. Following close behind was a magnificent wild stallion, proud and powerful, its mane flowing like silk in the wind. Word of the return spread like wildfire. Villagers rushed to Wei's farm, eyes wide with amazement, mouths full of congratulations. "What fortune!" they exclaimed. "Now you have not one, but 2 horses. Your luck has changed overnight." Wei offered them the same humble smile, his voice as steady as always. "Perhaps," he said, "but this too shall pass." A few weeks later, inspired by the beauty and strength of the wild stallion, Wei's only son, a strong, spirited young man, decided to tame the new horse. He was full of enthusiasm, eager to break it in and ride it across the hills. But the horse, still untamed by man's hand, resisted. One fateful attempt saw the stallion rear back violently, throwing the young man to the ground with a terrible force. A loud crack echoed through the field. The boy's leg was broken. Soon the villagers gathered again, their faces painted with sorrow and concern. "How terrible," they mourned. "Your son's injury may never fully heal, and without him, how will you manage the farm? You must be devastated." Yet Wei, sitting quietly by his son's bedside, his hands folded gently in his lap, spoke the same words with a voice soft as falling rain. "This too shall pass." Seasons shifted. The fields turned golden, then bare, then green again. And then came news that sent chills through the village. A war had erupted in the neighboring kingdom. The king's army, needing fresh recruits, began moving from village to village, conscripting all able-bodied young men to fight. Soldiers came riding into Wei's village, banners flying, weapons gleaming. Cries of grief filled the air as families watched their sons taken away to uncertain fates. But Wei's son, still limping with his broken leg, was left untouched. He had been spared. Once more the villagers came to Wei, but this time their voices were hushed with reverence. "What a strange blessing in disguise," they said. "Your son's injury saved him from the horrors of battle. You must feel truly fortunate now." Wei looked at them kindly, and his eyes held both sorrow and peace. "Perhaps," he replied with his usual grace, "but this too shall pass." And so the years rolled on, like the slow but certain tide of a great river. The village saw its fair share of joys and heartbreaks, of births and losses, of harvests both bountiful and barren. Through it all, Wei remained the same. He tended his land with steady hands and a tranquil heart. The winds of time may have weathered his face and bent his back, but his spirit remained as strong and serene as ever. His neighbors often wondered at his peace. They whispered about him at night, curious about the secret he seemed to carry in his silence. But those who had listened closely over the years knew the answer. It was not a spell or a mystery, but a truth so simple it echoed like a mantra through every chapter of Wei's life. This too shall pass. In the grand weave of existence, where days of laughter are often followed by nights of tears, where the wheel of fortune never stays still, Wei's quiet wisdom stood like a lighthouse, unshaken by the storms, untouched by the shifting tides. His story, simple yet profound, became legend in the village, not because of grand victories or dramatic turns of fate, but because of the way he met each moment, with presence,